I'm going to ask you to go for a walk with me through Hakuba or through other towns in Nagano Prefecture and just enjoy the scenery. We're out on the banks of the Hayakawa River. This is a river that goes through the town of Hakuba, and I'm standing up on the dike right now and having a look around. That neighborhood over there that we see is called the Meitetsu neighborhood, and it is a popular neighborhood of vacation houses and permanent residents. But let's get down into the riverbed. The Hayakawa River was almost dry a couple of weeks ago. In fact, it pretty much was dry. But we've had a lot of rain since then, so you can see there that the water's flowing. We'll walk down there a little bit. And I'll try to talk a little louder since I know the water is getting louder too. And as you can see, the Hayakawa River is a pretty engineered river. I don't know why. I suppose it keeps control over the flooding, etc. in the area. There are certainly times when we have an abundance of water coming through here. So I imagine there's probably some reasons for that. I don't know. But fortunately, the Matsukawa River, which also comes through Hakuba, and the Himekawa River, we have 3 rivers in the village of Hakuba, and the other 2 rivers are less engineered than the Hayakawa. That's this river, at least in this area. There are parts of the Hayakawa that are not, but also this river is heavily used for producing electricity, etc. They dam it up several times, and so it is a pretty engineered river. I'm going to walk up here a little bit. Almost tripped on some rocks. I'm going to walk up here a little bit. Let me explain a little bit about why I'm doing this series, 10,000 Steps. I spent a lot of time on my face. And I've realized that my face is a lot less interesting than the surroundings. So this time, for 10,000 Steps, I'm going to ask you to go for a walk with me through Hakuba or through other towns in Nagano Prefecture, which is where we live, and just enjoy the scenery. So for this series, instead of keeping the camera trained on my face the whole time, which is hardly interesting, I'm going to keep the camera pointed at the scenery because that's really what we want to look at. And as you can see through the weeds here, maybe you can sort of make it out. There's the Hayakawa. We're still right on the riverbed of the Hayakawa. It's flowing pretty well today, and as you can see, we got quite a bit of cloud cover up above, and that cloud cover is really preventing our view of the big mountains back behind. We've had this cloud cover for the past few days. I don't think it's characteristic of this time of year, but this has been a strange year. Hotter than usual. A lot more rain than usual, harder rain than usual. It's really been quite a rough year, but they say that this winter is also going to be a rough winter. Well, rough, I say, from the standpoint of maybe the animals living up in the mountains, but for the skiers, it should be an ideal winter. And as you can see over there, if you look, see that blue tarp over there? That's really indicative of what's going on in Hakuba these days, because the real estate is just absolutely booming, for better or for worse. Many of the locals think it's for worse. Maybe I even tend to agree a little bit, although I'm certainly one of those people who sort of came along and settled in this place in the recent years. So I guess I'm sort of part of the problem. But as you can see over there, there are a lot of houses that are being built, a lot of houses that are being refurbished. People are selling and buying, and there's a lot of action in the real estate market in Hakuba. In fact, I'm starting another series called Adventures in Real Estate, in which I'm going to sort of outline some of the adventures that we've been having with Japanese real estate over the past few years. I think you'll find it quite interesting. But one of the things I point out there is that here in Hakuba, the real estate business is absolutely booming. About 25% increase in land values in the past year. And that's one of the fastest growing land value increases in all of Japan. Japan actually as a country has been increasing its land value at about 1 or 2% over the past year, which is actually not bad considering the fact that the land prices have been falling for the past several years here in Japan. So yeah, a little growth in the real estate market. Again, for better, for worse. A lot of it has to do with foreign investments into the area. So I guess that will lead to its own problems and successes going forward. We'll see what happens. But anyway, getting back to the series, 10,000 Steps, what I imagine is that I'd like to take you for some of these walks, some of these hikes through the area and see what I see every day, and also talk about what I think about maybe every day as well. There's a couple of hikers out there. You can kind of see them. Maybe they're fishing even. They're certainly right on the banks of the river. So I'm not sure what they're doing, but looks like they're fishing maybe. But anyway, so what I really want to show you is how beautiful this place is. So we're going to take walks through Hakuba. We'll take walks in other areas of Nagano Prefecture, in the neighboring towns of Omachi and Otari and Ogawa. These are all towns in the area that are quite beautiful in their own ways. Very different views, but all of them spectacular views. So I'll try to get into that. One of the other things I want to get into is a little bit about life and culture in Japan. So I'm not the only person on the internet doing that. There's plenty of people who are pointing a camera at Japan and telling everybody what they think of it. And sure, I'll be the next one. And maybe my perspective will be a little bit different from others. At times, I'm sure it will be. At other times, I'm sure it will reflect what others say. But it certainly is my own perspective. And I will honestly share that perspective with you as the series progresses and as all my series progress. So I'm kind of hoping that this one is the low-tech daily chat or weekly chat. I'm sure it will not be daily. The weekly chat that we can share, just sort of talking about various aspects of living in Japan from my perspective. And as I get a little bit further upstream on the Hayakawa River, I'm walking on the Misorano side. The Misorano is another neighborhood of Hakuba, which has a lot of vacation houses, houses buying and selling and building, very, very strong in this area as well. Of course, fortunately, one of the great things about Hakuba is even though I'm right next to the neighborhood, we almost can't tell that I'm there because here we are in just some very, very wild underbrush and forest around us. And that is the beauty of being up in this area. And we're steadily gaining some elevation as I walk as well. It's not a really strenuous walk, but maybe you can even hear it in my voice a little bit. A little bit of elevation gaining here as well. So while we walk on the banks of the Hayakawa River, and as I pointed out earlier, it's a river that is quite heavily engineered, I thought I'd share my perspectives and opinions about the Japanese tendency to control nature. And you know, the Japanese are famous for loving nature. This is something that they will tell you, and I certainly believe it to be true. There's a little shot of the river there. That's quite nice, quite beautiful. I'll try to speak up a little louder because I know that river is pretty loud through there. At any rate, the Japanese are nature-loving people. I think that they are not particularly unique in this regard. I believe that a lot of people love nature. I don't think there's really a culture that isn't nature-loving in a lot of ways. But Japan has a unique relationship, I believe, with nature. And one of the things that has always been a hallmark of Japanese relationship to nature has been their almost subtle attempts to control nature. Nature, from a Japanese perspective, is not necessarily something that should be just left to nature. In fact, if you look at a Japanese garden, the Japanese perspective of gardening is a very, very controlled version of what the plants should do. What's interesting is that in many cases, that control is an attempt to mimic nature. The tendency towards controlling riverbeds with cement beds, or even creating sort of false waterfalls, etc. These are public works that are probably in some ways necessary for the control of the water, especially in series of disasters, and there's plenty of disasters in Japan. Lots of floods, lots of landslides, lots of earthquakes and other issues. So it's certainly understandable their desire to control nature and to sort of manage what happens with nature. But we see it in their art, we see it in their gardening, we see it in their public works, a tendency towards controlling nature. Unfortunately, as you can see there, a very large electrical pole. There's actually a series of electrical lines going through here. Unfortunately, that is another hallmark of Japanese relationship to nature, which is that nature does not take a priority over the man-made environment. Speaking of nature, that's a beautiful view right there. We're actually going to walk right back down the Hayakawa banks now and give you a different perspective. Those mountains are the mountains that looking off towards Nagano City over there, and if you keep walking straight in the direction that we're walking now, eventually you would probably get to Nagano City, although it would be a treacherous walk. People have certainly done it, and they've done it on bicycles as well. Maybe we'll do that sometime in the future. But for now, we're just going to walk down the banks of the river here. And getting back to the perspective of nature, I think that nature, from a Japanese perspective, is something that happens regardless of the control, and something that should be attempted to be controlled. But despite the fact that they are attempting to control nature, they know they can't control nature. So we see this in Japanese art as well. One of the beauties of Japanese art is the idea of imperfections and rust and things getting old. And this is certainly an aspect of nature that they can't control. And you certainly see this in, you see it in gardens, but you also see it in the houses themselves. The houses are almost designed to age, and putting a new coat of paint over rust, or maybe painting over some old yakisugi, that's not what the Japanese do. They just simply allow it to rust, or they allow the yakisugi to fade, because that's what nature does. I often think, well, geez, just a coat of paint would really improve the overall look of whatever, but I also understand that that's just not the way they think about it. While the Japanese love nature, they certainly respect nature. Nature is, to the Japanese, nature is beautiful and scary. It's dangerous and it's exciting. The desire to control nature here in Japan, I think, is quite a bit stronger than it is in other countries, where we simply think that, just let nature be, let nature do what it'll do, and that's beautiful. I certainly wouldn't imply that one way is better than the other. I think that they both have their own sense of beauty and their own aesthetic, and certainly no one can disagree the beauty of a Japanese garden is there. And some might disagree that old Japanese houses are not quite as beautiful, but when allowed to age naturally and observe that aging, it might be a beautiful thing, actually. So in some ways, the way that the Japanese look at their relationship to nature, allowing nature to do what it does, but at the same time trying to control, manifest and manage nature, is a very fascinating relationship. So I thought that I would just talk about that today. on the first of our 10,000 step series. And I'd love to know what you think about this idea. There's a lot to say, and I wouldn't even for a moment suggest that my opinion is definitive or even correct. There are probably people who have far, far more intelligent things to say on this topic than me. If you are one of those people, please let me know in the comments. And I hope that you'll enjoy this series of 10,000 steps, as well as this episode on Japanese nature. Thanks for joining me. And I'll be back walking next week.